Well, welcome back. This is the fourth of 6 videos looking at risk statements and how you write those. And in this particular case, we're going to talk about decision making and talk about making decisions based on an extension of a paper we read earlier in the semester. So as you recall, we looked at the analytic hierarchy process early in the semester. It was based on using a multi-attribute decision matrix to make decisions where you've got courses of action criteria, weights associated with those criteria, and you're using them all together to reach a specific decision. So what this paper does is extends that idea, and it starts to look at severe loss scenarios and to make it a little bit more complex. So it's going to introduce 3 kind of key terms that generate a perceived composite risk. The first of which is the expected loss associated with a particular event occurring. So you're looking at a series of different losses that you're going to sum together with their probability of that amount of a loss with a particular threat vulnerability pair occurring. Second, you're going to calculate an expected severe loss using a threshold value and associated probability. And finally, you're going to look at the standard deviation of the loss. And typically, what would happen in a normal scenario, you'd only use that first variable. You'd calculate some form of an expected loss, be it an annualized or single year. What you're doing with this is you're adding 2 new variables into it that allow you to account that sometimes a singular event can dominate because it's such a large event, that expected loss, and you're taking into account the spread, if you will, of the potential losses that could occur. So here are the formulas for this. You should memorize these immediately because they're on all the exams. No, that's not true. But these are, if you're mathematically inclined, these are the formulas showing how this would potentially work. This shows from the paper, the first part up there is the pairwise comparison, which is used to calculate the weights. And as you can see, they're using expected loss, expected severe loss, and standard deviation of loss really as the criteria for evaluating different courses of action. And as you can see on the table in the right, that chart is a bit larger, but it's looking at 4 different proposals. It's calculating out those values based on an intermediate table that you can look at the paper for, and you can see the perceived composite risk associated with each of these approaches, with that in bold being the lowest value within that particular category. And so it takes some information that we've covered earlier in the class, builds on it, and makes it a bit more complex. Now, the math behind this is really not that hard. It's actually fairly straightforward. The paper is relatively straightforward, easy to read. At the even undergraduate level, you shouldn't have any problems reading it, let alone in a graduate class. So look that over. And so why is this important? Because it gives us a mechanism for routinely, systematically evaluating different risks and trying to account for them in a systematic way. Our initial approach into this was using a multi-attribute decision matrix, which again we covered earlier in the class. This now gets into covering it with with some different criteria, trying to account for those severe losses and the standard deviation of loss, which may vary depending on the threat and vulnerability pair. All right, very well. Short video, but we've covered now expected loss from Bodin's perspective, that external paper. This is the 4th of 6 videos looking at risk statements, and specifically Chapter 5 of Wheeler's most excellent textbook on risk management. Next 2 videos are going to focus on quantitative analysis as it relates back and different techniques that could be applied within risk management to address that. And it's another one of those additional readings for the course. So keep on studying, keep on learning, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.